All right, welcome to the Five Stones podcast. I am your host, Raymond Modulin, and one of the hosts, actually, and the other two.
I am Colin Hedegaard. Good morning.
I'm Joe Trester, the real estate advocate.
Yes. And sporting the Colts jersey after the big win yesterday against Tennessee.
It looked like a fun game.
It was a game I actually attended. Went down to and watched that game. Nice weather, good outcome of a game. And I want to compliment the Tennessee fans. We did not have to fight our way out after.
They seem to be nice, cordial people.
After the win, it was pretty good overtime, but it was a fantastic win. They said that was the first 4-win streak for the Colts since Andrew Luck.
Wow.
First
And I
time
think
in-
that's the first home loss for Tennessee this year.
Yeah.
They've been undefeated at home prior to
So it was a good game. So once again, Monday, we like to present a little bit about what's going on. But before we begin, I will say that I did find one of those Crux cigars.
Excellent.
So I'm having a Crux cigar. It's a Maduro double. Seems pretty well. And my black coffee.
Excellent.
And today, what have you
I'm
got?
smoking a San Cristobal again. It's a Maduro. Excuse me. I think it's part of the Ashton family.
Mhm.
It's a good cigar.
And I have a Padron 5000 today.
That's normally your cigar.
Yes, I have a Padron in my pocket for the next.
The next one.
Every time I smoke something else, I most of the time wish I would have smoked a Padron.
Well, that's good. You like what you like.
Yeah.
I do find it's hard to switch brands in a day.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's just me, but if I'm New World, I like to do New World for the day. Tomorrow may be a different cigar, but if I'm doing multiple brands, like you said, it's very much like coffee. You know, you're used to the taste of one coffee, you have another one, it doesn't taste the same.
And taste change. Maybe
Yeah.
1 month you switch to something else and enjoy those for a while.
My taste is dependent completely upon how much the funding is for that month on those cigars.
Based upon the wallet.
While it's a little light, well, we'll be smoking some cheaper ones this month.
The factory throwouts.
No, I don't do that. I will just not smoke.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit today about the impending commercial real estate problem that we're probably going to see, and that the three of us have been predicting
Yeah.
since the spring of
Last year.
2023. Yeah. And I think it's coming.
Did you say you saw some tremendously discounted sales?
There was
An
a
article.
building in San Francisco that was valued at one time at $300 million. It just went on the market for, get this, $60 million.
Ouch.
It's an 80% loss in value.
San Francisco is wrecked, I will say, in defense of the low valuation. But it's like the zombie apocalypse on the streets, according to Elon
But-
Musk and others.
That is very true, but when you think about property values and everything, you take that just here to central Indiana, okay? You're probably not going to have a whole lot of $300 million properties in central Indiana,
That's
but
all of Indiana, isn't it?
yeah, it might be the entire state. So yeah, well, they've got issues that are depressing some of those values. It's going to happen everywhere.
Right, but to your point, I think what you're saying, and I agree with 100%, is they may have been overpriced anyway.
Yeah.
So it may not be to the extent of an 80% loss, but I'm here to tell you, you guys know this, any loss is too big.
Yeah.
You know, when you're losing anything. And I think, and you're the financing guy, most of these commercial loans are actually put with a clause in there that allows the lender to pull that.
Yeah, they basically renew every 1, 2, 3, 5 years.
Yeah.
Usually 3 years. And the reason they do that is the environments change, rates change, but also the business changes, and they want to make sure the business can still handle a note of that type. So that's why I think you're seeing the delay in the pain, because those 3-year terms, they amortize over 15 or 25 years, but they renew those loans every 3 years. So we're just now hitting some of those renewals, and they're looking at things saying, well, now we got to charge you 8%. And by the way, your revenue's off 25%, so we don't like this loan anymore.
Yeah.
So there's we're seeing the beginning of that kind of business.
But I also think we're seeing the beginning of the renewals from when people signed everything right before COVID really shut everything down. And that changed business so fundamentally. And you still, I mean, to this day, people are not going back full time. That the days of, I go downtown with my three-piece suit and go into my high-rise, commercial building and do all of this work. They don't have to do that. They can, instead of giving people a raise, they can say, "Why don't you stay home? And there's your raise. You don't have to drive in and go back and forth and commute and do all of this."
Well, the national vacancy rate right now in the commercial world is 19.6. Los Angeles has the highest at 26%. So 1 out of every 4 square foot's vacant.
That sounds about right. Driving around the north side of Indianapolis feels that way here.
Yeah, we say that all the time, that there is a lot of buildings, and they're still talking about some of the larger buildings, some of the larger companies are going back, but most of the middle to small size companies are not. And like you said, those 3-year notes, or those, they call them a call, that 3-year call is going to be coming soon. And maybe the 5-year that they wrote 2 years preceding. So we're going to start seeing a lot of those. And like you said, those interest rates were 3.5%, 4% in commercial, which are now going to be 9 to 11. So you're talking a 300% increase in their interest rate, which basically lowers the value by 66%.
Well, that's sounds like the result we're getting in
Yes.
some of these examples. So,
And to play off of what Raymond was saying,
Hey,
prior,
stay in your own playground.
no, I like to, anyhow, to play off of that, a lot of companies, if we all recall what the economy was doing leading up to COVID, I mean, things were people were making money hand over fist, and businesses were growing, and people were investing back into those businesses, and there were a lot of companies that were small to medium investing in themselves, thinking they're going to take off and be the next big one, just to have their knee cut off at the knees right at that point. And we're coming back to that. I mean, there's several on the north side of Indianapolis that were building brand new buildings, just getting ready to move everyone in, and then COVID hit and no one moved in.
Yeah.
And, we've got hospitals down here by where we are, where they built the whole hospital and it's just sitting there vacant.
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 of those quick emergency care hospitals that were finished and never moved into, that have now been vacant almost 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking, 100,000 square foot buildings just sitting empty.
So one of the answers, or one of the ancillary parts that I hadn't really thought about it until I started reading, Kevin O'Leary, by the way, Mr. Wonderful, put a really good article out. But one of the things he mentions is that a lot of municipalities rely on the taxes from these bigger buildings to fund, municipal services. And with these companies going bankrupt or the properties going into foreclosure, that now that the trickle-down effect is going to be that maybe your town won't have the money that it was counting on for roads and police and fire and all of that. So there's going to be a second wave generate down into this problem.
this is all the lagging component we've discussed a number of times.
We have said this many times, that our residential buyers still mindset is when the property was good, and commercial still hasn't hit yet. It's going to be the summer of '24 when you start seeing more and more of this happen. I think those loans are going to start being called due, and the people just can't refinance them, or won't refinance them. Like Joe said, what's the need now?
If you needed something to help you decide to work remote or not, maybe tripling that payment on your commercial loan will do it for you.
So what's the outcome when they call those loan due? If it's amortized over 50 years, or 15 year am, 5-year call. When they call it due, if the person doesn't refinance it, is that a foreclosure, or is it just, does that become a property that now is for sale?
Yeah, I mean, typically they're going to try to recover the money. As soon as it's vacant, they'll start trying to market it and sell it. The bank doesn't want to own properties.
Right, but I guess my question is, when I have a 30-year note on my house and I miss the payments 3 years in, they foreclose to get that property back.
Yeah.
Technically, this loan is being called. It's not like I've missed a payment. They're just calling it due, so they want the principal. That person's going to end up selling that building probably for the outstanding debt.
Well, hopefully they're going to get the outstanding debt covered. Commercial loans are also often secured by other things, so they aren't just residential. A lot of times they'll secure the note against accounts receivable, other assets that are inside the business, vehicles or whatever the business has. So they may lien everything.
Yeah.
But, I mean, here's the other side of that. If I have a house and I miss a payment and they foreclose, I'm not going to have a house anymore. These businesses have switched their footprint to the point that they don't need that building. They could file, I believe it's Chapter 11, where they can reorganize. They could file Chapter 11, jettison that building, reorganize, and because they have shifted to working at home or doing something else, that business could survive and jettison all of that and let it sit. It's a different world.
I had a friend at one of the banks, and he worked in special accounts. And ultimately, his job was just something like that, to negotiate with the businesses how to exit out of situations. So maybe they lease the building for a little while, or maybe they list it for sale, or maybe they vacate and lean it. But he was trying to come to a negotiation of an exit for both.
Well, we know for a fact that Simon had some issues with some of their tenants, and the tenants were refusing to even come to the table to negotiate to help.
Yeah, during COVID with the special rules.
Yeah. So and in the residential world back in 08 and 09 specifically, near the end of it, they actually had a couple of really cool terms that came out. They called them vampire homes and zombie homes. Mm-hmm. Vampire homes were the banks were taking the property through foreclosure, but realizing that a vacant home was higher chance of getting vandalized or flooded and things like that, they were actually allowing the person to live in the home like a vampire living off the dead person, to make sure it at least didn't fall in further disrepair. Then they had the zombie homes, which is kind of like what we're talking about, where you drive by and you see the tumbleweed blowing through the parking lot and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
So you wonder how much that's going to play into effect of, we want to call the loan due, but we understand that we're not going to be able to sell this property. Maybe you can stay in it and pay some rent to help defray.
Yeah, I think it depends on the scale of the problem. So if it's widespread, I don't know what they'll do.
Yeah.
If it's widespread, they're going to be negotiating for any revenue they can get if they can't sell the buildings.
I think we're also going to be looking at some more, for lack of a better terminology, forced migration. When some of these businesses end up shutting down because they can't do it, and people, the economy in that city is so dependent upon some of that stuff, it is going to force people out of where they are now and moving somewhere else. So it may also, de facto, if interest rates do continue to come down for homes, force people into moving other places because they'll be able to afford to do it now. Yeah. And they'll move to where the economy is cooking and where they can succeed.
So, I had a friend that worked at Enron, slightly different case.
Yes.
But when we were in Houston, I was going to A&M, they lived in Houston, Enron closed, he moved to Minnesota to get a job.
I think we're going to see a lot of that. I mean, we've already seen a lot of migration in the last couple of years. COVID migration. People going to where they can...
Talk about a culture shock. He went from Houston to Minnesota.
It's a little warm, a little chilly.
Well, Minnesota does have, 2 seasons? July and winter?
Yeah, I think that's it.
In all my years of experience in interviewing people, 90% of them move to another state for a job or a woman or man, you know what I mean, a spouse.
Yeah.
Really, those are the main 2 reasons. So perhaps that will happen. The people will go where the jobs are.
Yeah. So, a couple of things I've been pondering is, I guess, if you have a large stash of cash available, you might be running into or finding some good deals. Now, the question is going to become, what am I going to do with a building? Even if I buy a $300 million building for 60, that's a damn good price.
Yeah.
You know, you're paying 20 cents on the dollar. But what would I do with the building? You know, so there's the, you know.
I know what I would do.
What would you do?
I would turn it into affordable housing.
Well,
You're going to need it.
that is one of the answers I think you're going to see, is that some of these will become some type of housing.
I would market like crazy to the millennials and younger that don't want to have a whole lot of footprint. They want to be able to pick up and go at a moment's notice and try something different. You could get them some lovely efficiency apartments on a 3, 6, 9, 12-month lease. And
I just read something about some young millennials that did that. They bought a high school that was in.
I was getting ready to joke and say a prison.
Well, they bought a high school and I think they turned it into 20, 25 units of
Yeah.
apartments, and
I was talking with one of my sons this weekend, who's the 28-year-old, and he was telling me that he looked at an apartment downtown.
Mhm.
It was $2,200 for 1,100 square feet.
That's inexpensive right now.
I told him, I said, son, you understand that that's almost double my house payment. I said, it would be more wise of you to just buy a house. And he literally said, but I don't want the upkeep.
Yeah.
So, I mean, here you've got a mindset, and I'm in this business, and a mindset of my own son that is willing to almost pay double for upkeep, because I don't
Well,
want the
I
upkeep.
think I'm going to call it, a dormitory style of living that I think would work well. You get quads. Maybe you have 4 rooms that everyone has independently with shared kitchen and shared living area, and we see that with
Hostels?
assisted living.
I was going to say, you're starting to sound a lot like a commune here.
Well, I think that there's a lot of that. There is your son is a prime example of someone that would enjoy that. They have their own area that is locked down and is their place. But if they need a kitchen, they can do that. If they need an area to entertain, they can do that. But they don't have the upkeep all the time because it's common. I mean,
Well,
it's
one thing that always-
works so
I think
well.
we can get this. Can we scrounge up 60 million?
And buy this in San
No.
Francisco. Is that really a place you want to get
Well,
involved
what we need
in?
are 60 million people to like and subscribe.
Everybody send us $1.
Yes. Then we're up to $116. Yes.
thing that bothered me about commercial renovating it was always the fact that it's 300,000 square feet. So at $4 a square foot, new flooring
Yeah.
is a pretty big investment.
Oh, it's going to be, but then again, we're in that whole statement, and we kind of switch topics about you are going to have to spend some money to make money. But if you're buying literally at 20 cents on the dollar, think about if you had the availability, the cash to drop another $1.5 million. And like he said, you're successful at renting these at $2,000 a month.
Well, if things recover and you can get it back to 120 million, you 100%
Yeah.
return. And
One of the problems that I think you would see with your idea
Yeah.
is zoning issues,
Yes.
which at some point the city's going to have to be reasonable too, because it's going to play back into what I just said. If that property has been foreclosed upon and no one's paying the taxes and the municipality's taking a hit, and you come in with this idea and say, hey, look, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to be able to put more taxes back into your system, but you've got to give me that residential zoning for this building.
Well, and that's been happening for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
if we take downtown Indianapolis as an example, the old William H. Block department store has been converted into condos.
That's good.
And there are hundreds of units in there, and they are, ranging from 1 bedroom to 3 bedroom. They've got on-site parking and everything else. The city of Indianapolis allowed for that variance and that change so that something was in that building as opposed to it just sitting there in decay.
Yeah.
well, government
Maybe we've got a new business model.
Maybe.
Government caused the problem, so they ought to be comforting and fixing them.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Yeah, the government caused the problem, so they should be helping us fix the
Yeah, but
problem.
did you just say comforting and government in the same sentence? I didn't think that really went well together.
They should take comfort in changing the zoning to let people reinvest in their. Well, we have a population flooding in that needs housing. We have inflation that's crashing everything,
Yeah.
forcing interest rates up.
So I wonder how we can get a list of all those loans that are coming due. That would be a good idea.
Be a great list.
It'd be a great list to have.
Maybe someone out there has a list.
Yeah, someone out there that'd be great.
Or an idea on how to get that list.
Yeah, they won't hit. And the sales cycle on commercial, isn't it normally 6 months or longer? I mean, isn't it a long sales cycle?
On
Oh,
Commercial
for the
properties.
actual
Yeah.
process,
Yeah, the
yes.
transaction, so.
Yes.
Even when they hit the market, it's not abnormal for them to sit on the market for a long time.
Well, I think the key is going to be, even with that good value, the answer is, what are you going to do with it?
Yeah.
Because like I said, even if I was paying 20 cents on the dollar and had $60 million in my pocket, what would I do with that building that they couldn't be doing unless we did a zoning change and went a different direction? But that's going to involve, like you said, on top of that 60 million, I've got another 10 million in doing that.
Whereas if you take that 60 million and you go somewhere where there's nothing there and it's already zoned the way you want it, can you build it the way you want from the beginning for
Yes.
that 60 million instead of
Yeah.
taking something that you have to retrofit and deal with?
You can,
Because
but it
so-
won't be downtown.
Exactly. So there is going to have to be some help from the government, which I know everyone, the scariest thing in the world, we're with the government and we're here to help you. Yeah.
Yeah.
That isn't going to be the case, but that's what's going to have to happen. That's what's going to have to happen.
You know, you guys keep talking like this, we're going to have black helicopters here.
That's fine.
Probably.
It is interesting because, like I said, my first thought was a pool of money. I even mentioned it to you guys. But the bigger thought into this is, what would you do with it? You know, the entire concept of how business has changed almost changes the concept of high-rise buildings.
Well, I think people answer that they, in the past, let's say 20, 30 years, haven't wanted that. They've been moving to the suburbs outside
Yeah.
of the urban areas.
But now with the telecommuting and things of that nature, think about this. I run 50 agents out of 1,000 square feet, which, by the way, is the same 1,000 square feet that we run the school. That is 17 states. But same building, different office. So if you were a big, we both know a guy that ran a Dial for Dollars business.
Yeah.
He used to work for nonprofit organizations, and he had a phone bank of people that would dial and get people to donate, and they got a percentage of it. They were all housed out of one place.
Hundreds of them.
Yeah, hundreds. Could they not now dial from home?
They could.
So I mean, just the whole concept of this, of the way technology now, we interact with Zoom and cell phones, that whole business model of being in one spot is gone. Therefore, there is no need for 30-story building downtown. So even if I could buy it, what would you do with it? Because the business model that you would have normally put in there is not the same now.
Here we go to spin down a really crazy path. Makes you honestly think about when Walt Disney rolled out his original idea for Epcot. If you could get everything in that high-rise building, if you could get the school, the fire department, the police department, the grocery store, the department store, the housing, and no one was leaving it, you might be able to push that. I don't know that I agree with that, I'm just saying that I think that is a concept that would work. That was the whole idea behind Epcot
Yeah.
at one point.
I think China and Russia have that kind of stuff.
Plus, it also pushes into the
Looking for the black helicopters.
Okay, look
No,
it
but
up. Maybe they
You
don't.
know, we have this big push for electric cars that can't drive anywhere. So if you
Well,
don't have to go anywhere, you can have that electric car plugged in and not going anywhere. And it works.
The other portion of this that we haven't brought up is retail, which
What's
has
that?
basically been replaced by online purchasing.
Yeah.
So you used to put retail stores downstairs and offices or housing upstairs downtown in Indianapolis.
So, I guess one thing I do want to clarify, and maybe we need to touch on since you brought it up, the warehousing sector in the commercial real estate world is actually up.
Yes, warehousing is.
So, because of all the online retail, that they're needing these fulfillment centers.
Need storage.
And we know right out here in
All around
south of Indianapolis.
10 miles from where we are right now.
Yeah, 2 or 3 million square foot plus buildings that were leased before they were bought. I talked to one of the brokers. I was joking with him about, hey, could I put a spot in there? And he's like, dude, it's already leased out. They had it leased out before it was even fully built.
Yeah.
So that sector is not really hurting. It's the office sector that's getting crushed. And probably will be. And let's face it, every time you turn around, there's a new app or a new company that has created some way to connect or interact via a distance. So they're actually building more technology to not allow people to come back to work
Same
in that
thing
office.
happens even with grocery stores. I can't remember the last time I physically walked in a grocery store. I set it up on my computer, I pick what I want, it gets delivered to my porch.
Do you know how it works? The grocery store?
I do.
He does.
We might know some people that don't. But, yeah, I mean,
Well, we'll keep an eye
it's a
on this over
convenience.
the next 6 months. We'll certainly revisit it. But
We have been predicting this, the three of us have been predicting it for at least 12 months already. And I think it's going to be another 6 months. The summer, Q2, beginning of Q3, you're going to see more and more of these issues of the commercial going south.
An X factor would be productivity of the employee. I think there's some places are starting to call employees back because they recognize, and evidently productivity was diminishing prior to COVID.
So there'd be kind of cool if you're an economist out there, an economist?
and I don't think
Economist?
an economist, there we go. That would be correct.
Or a hobbyist. You can
Or a hobbyist. There's got to be a curve somewhere that you can intersect how much you're saving versus employee productivity. I mean, if your employee productivity goes down, say 10%, but you're not, because they're at home, but you're not spending, $100,000 a month in rent,
Yep.
are you willing to take that?
I'm
Well,
sure.
is it a 20% decrease or is it a 30? So there's got to be some curve somewhere that says, at this cost factor, it's cheaper to have a employee decrease and not have the building than it is to make them come back and get full productivity, but yet I'm now paying $100,000 a month for my building that they're sitting in. That'd be kind of cool to see for me. I'd like to see that. If
I don't know,
anybody knows that, send it to us. Like and subscribe to this,
Yep.
and attach a.
Or if you run a
Report.
business, maybe you've done the data on your little business. I'd be curious to.
Yeah,
It'll be a
even-
business-to-business decision, but broadly, there probably is data on productivity and other things we could.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking, we are talking about all of this in very broad terms. There's, kind of like, if we go back and you go back and you watch some of our old radio show conversations, we, talk very broadly that we think everything is going to be a certain way. Nothing will be completely that way. There will always be a company that is able to sustain and use a high rise and want to do that. There are things that will, it's just the shift in the dynamics. Maybe it was 80-20 and now it's 20-80, and it's going to start to switch that ratio. There will be people that are doing it the way that we've always been used to. It's just not going to be the rule of thumb anymore.
Don't think that's going to be true. especially in the office setting. Like I said, there are now so many technology companies that are making that interconnectivity better, faster, easier, that it would be, that curve would have to be very tough for me to say. I mean, we've talked about it just with the school, moving to Florida and still being able to do the work because we do it all online. We do it by cell phone, instant messenger, Zoom. It would be really tough for me to believe that anybody in that office arena would ever go back to work.
Well, I mean, here's a hypothetical. Let's think about a large pharmaceutical company such as the one that we would have in Indianapolis. They're always going to need to have space in large areas because of what they do specifically. It's going to be very industry specific.
Yes, but that is production. I don't think they need the office building, is what I guess.
They may not. You may be right about that.
Yeah, like I said, the sector of warehousing is not going to change. Probably production plants like GM or Chrysler, they're not going to change, except the front office might.
Yeah.
My father worked at Chrysler where it was just one of the office buildings. I can imagine he retired from there years ago and is no longer living, but I would imagine in his day, and if that were today, he would not be in the office doing what he did. He would have been at home.
Yeah. Salesforce in Indianapolis has been part of that conversation. They went all remote, and I think they've been changing their tune recently.
To go back, you mean?
Yeah. But we'll read on that and talk about it next time.
I think you'll see a lot more hybrid.
See if we can get him on
All right.
to be a guest here, the CEO of Salesforce.
I'll go call him.
Okay.
The Great Dane is coming for you.
If you happen to anybody know the CEO of Salesforce, have him get in touch with us. I'd like to talk to him because that would be a good conversation as to why they think they're doing that. I would like to know.
Me too.
So,
Me three.
anything else?
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Thanks. Hey, don't forget to subscribe. You in a hurry?
Yep.
He's speedy.
Hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notified so that you know when we put stuff out.
Yeah,
Thanks.
leave some comments. We've been responding.
Yeah, we'll respond to all of them. Thanks. See you next time.
Harumph.